You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one on one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1211. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I hope you are doing awesome today. We come to you 3 to 5 days a week, depending on how many episodes we end up doing, helping you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We want you to thrive. We want you to do well. We want you to be successful, but we want you to find the right clients. We want you to have the right training, the right expertise, the right clinical skills. We want to expand so that you learn some new things, that you really understand just how many different ways you can run a business that you absolutely love. There's so many ways to make money, and we should make sure we're doing the work that we enjoy, that feels good in the world. Today, I am so excited. We're going to be talking about attachment, trauma, and non-monogamy. This is going to be a really just interesting conversation. We're going to talk about the clinical side. We're going to talk about all sorts of other sides of it. You know, it's interesting. When I went through my divorce, so this would have been, 2021. I'm going through the divorce and separating. I was raised Catholic. I was then converted to be an evangelical, and then kind of undid that in my 30s. And the message that I had received as a kid was that whole kind of classic 1990s purity message. And so I had waited until I was married for my first time. And, working with my therapist during my divorce, there was so much that was hung up around sex, around just like all these different topics. My mom was a school nurse who taught sex ed, and somehow I got this really unhealthy message. And so I went through a good year of deconstructing what I had been told and what, and I had done that a lot. I was in my 40s. You got to address some of that, before then. But like to even think about, non-monogamy. I read like The Ethical Slut. I read, all sorts of these different books to just understand the menu that was out there. For the first time really in my life, I didn't have religion, sitting on top of my decisions. I didn't have a marriage. And my therapist was like, in a way, we kind of got to go back to your 20s and sort out like, who are you? And that's something that a lot of people haven't had the chance to really think through, or don't take the time to think through. So that's why I'm so excited to talk with Jessica Fern today. So Jessica Fern is the author of Polysecure, Attachment, Trauma, and Non-Monogamy. Jessica is a therapist, coach, and certified clinical trauma professional, as well as that book, the Polysecure Workbook, and Polywise, a deeper dive into navigating open relationships. So in her international private practice, Jessica works with individuals, couples, and people in multiple partner relationships who no longer want to be limited by their reactive patterns, cultural conditioning, insecure attachment styles, and past traumas, helping them to embody new possibilities in life and love. Jessica, welcome to the Practice podcast.
Oh, thank you, Joe. It's nice
Yeah,
to be
it's
here.
interesting. I don't think I've ever, even though that was just, 3 minutes, I'm trying to think if I've ever publicly said that was something that I was like exploring. I don't think I have. So thanks for pulling that out of me as we go into this discussion.
Yeah, well, I loved your intro on you. I was like, ooh, there's a lot we can get into here.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like it was a wide open canvas, and to just be like, okay, the relationship ladder I had been taught was, you date and then you wait and then you get married and then you maybe buy a house and maybe have kids, and then it was like very sketched out. And then to see how the dating world, which in my 20s I wasn't like a dating aficionado, had changed so much, and it was just like,
So
oh
much.
my gosh, like there's
Totally
so many
different world.
possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, I liked you using the word menu. Like the menu has expanded.
Yes. Well, and for me, it was what was helpful for me as I read through a lot of books, the ethical side of just being super honest with people. And, even before I would meet someone, I would say, listen, like I'm going through or have gone through a really, terrible divorce. My ex chose to leave the kids and move to California. I have near full custody of these kids. So just so you know, like before we have our first date, I want you to know that I have been through a lot of stuff. I am in therapy. I'm working on stuff, but I want you to know that that's a lot for you to take on and to learn in a first date. So, also, like, I don't plan to get married. I don't plan to have kids again, and I'm not sure kind of like what the dating world is for me at this point. So I tried to, even before we had our first date, have these like conversations ahead of time. Which then when I would go on a date, it was actually a lot healthier because I didn't have to start with telling this horrific story that
Right.
I had gone through.
Yeah, I think that can be one of the advantages of online dating or apps is that like there's all this pre-vetting because you get to just say certain things up front, right?
Yeah.
And see if there's at least some match in those categories.
Well, tell me about your counseling practice. Like, was this the specialty all along? Did
It
this
was
develop over time?
yeah, it sort of came to me. I was doing, therapy work. I knew I loved working with couples. And then in working with couples, I've told this story in other places too. There was this one week where all of like couples that I was working with literally brought up that they were curious about opening up their relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something's in the water.
Right. Like, okay. And one of them was reading Sex at Dawn. So I got that
Hmm.
immediately. And I personally knew about non monogamy. And I was like, I don't know anything therapeutically about this. Right. If anything, what I've, heard therapeutically isn't been helpful. And so I really initially leaned on my narrative therapy training because I was like, well, great, like any construct we can or discourse we can just deconstruct monogamy. I know how to do that with everything else. And then in that I really figured out I needed to bring in much more of an attachment lens because that's often what was happening and why it was so hard for people who even really wanted to do this was a lot of attachment ruptures were happening or attachment insecurity that they didn't really realize was there or might not have been there was showing up.
Mm. Now, as you developed, I mean, I remember I had in my practice, very similar. I'm in northern Michigan, so there's
Right.
not a ton of people. But I had a three-person configuration that was like a V shape with the man being
Mhm.
with both women. They called themselves a throuple. I know not everyone uses that as their
Yeah.
preferred, but that's what they called themselves. And at first, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so not skilled for this." But then I thought about so I'm Gottman level 2, thinking about, okay, what skills do I have that apply here? Okay, so there's several combinations here. There's like him with each of them. There's their relationship to each other, and then them, completely as a unit, and then them as a unit in society. And like those are all kind of configurations that a traditional cis couple will have. And so I thought, okay, we're talking about active listening, we're talking about reflection, attachment, all these skills that I have. And as I got into it, the things they were fighting about, it could have been any configuration. It had like really nothing to do with them as a throuple. It was more human relationships and
Yeah.
connections and discussion.
I would say yes, and I think that is
Yeah.
a portion of it for sure, where you're like, oh, this is like all relationships. And then, of course, there are specific things to non monogamy that just don't often show up elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, tell us some of those things. I mean, you've got your books, your workbooks. Give us kind of and I know that this is probably something you could do like an 8-hour masterclass
I know,
on.
right?
So, like, I want to right at the front end say that by doing a half-hour podcast, we are diluting a very complex and nuanced issue and discussion that, in the same way, whenever we've done things on race or social justice or psychedelics, like you just can't capture it all. So, I
Yes.
know that we will fall short, and give us the best shot at a kind of master class on therapists and working with couples
Yeah,
and
so
with yeah.
some of the things that we're, not going to see as much is um geez, let me think. The metamor relationship, so that's the partner of your partner, right? Where you're not together, but it's who your loved one or your lover is dating. And so that can be a very complex relationship. I mean, I see it has parallels to kind of in law relationships, like
Mm,
our brother and sister or mother and father in law. So there's some specifics there that can get complicated. What comes up a lot is justice jealousy or primal panic that you don't see as
mm,
much in more of the monogamous relationships. And so primal panic is when your partner is going on a date with someone else and you are activated into like a full nervous system attachment panic response. You feel like you're going to die sometimes, and it's a big meltdown, and people often mistake it for jealousy, like you're just being jealous. And that's not what's
mm,
happening at all. It's that you are used to your primary attachment figure as an adult being usually available, and the fact that they're with someone else like represents them being inaccessible, and the nervous system is freaking out.
mm.
Yeah. And since you've been writing about it in Polysecure, I've come to, evolve how I work with it. And I really have been taking an IFS parts approach now with the part of you that's experiencing primal panic. And I'm open to it being different. But every time I do that, there is a screaming baby part of an inner infant that was left in the crib alone, or parents were inaccessible for whatever reason, and that baby is made the spouse or the primary partner their attachment figure. And when that attachment figure is unavailable, they're having that same kind of reaction.
Mm. Now,
Yeah.
when you look at, I imagine there's lots of different phases of people that you work with. There's probably couples that are considering opening up.
Mhm.
There's ones that have been at it for a bit. There's ones that, I mean, there's lots of different configurations. When you look at couples that are thinking about opening up, what are the, I hate to use the word healthy or unhealthy because that has a certain judgment to it. But
Yeah.
what are some of the reasons that people are starting those conversations, and where would you say that maybe, and maybe there's a better word than healthy and unhealthy you'd choose, but when are those conversations healthy and when are they unhealthy? And feel free to change how I just said that.
Change the words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll see like maybe well intentioned or even healthy, we can say that, or like from an authentic place. When one or both people really feel like this is what they want, this is who they are, they want to explore this is a part of maybe sexual desires or relationship desires that they're looking to experience. And it's coming from that genuine place versus when someone is like trying to outsource needs that they're not getting in the relationship and they actually just don't want to break up. Or the relationship isn't healthy in a lot of different ways, and you think that opening up is going to make it better, and it rarely does. Opening
Yeah.
up requires more capacity and resources and bandwidth. That does put initially stress on a relationship. Yeah, and there are times too where it is the solution. When you have a couple that might want, a different interest to explore with someone that their primary partner has no interest in. You go, great, go explore that with somebody else. That's okay.
Mm.
Same thing with different sexual styles, or different sexual interests. It's like, oh, that can happen, with somebody else. We don't have to do that together, and we can accept that, and that's great.
Yeah. One thing that I've observed as I mean, now we've done what, 1,200 plus episodes, is as I interview people that are specialists in any particular area, they often will point to the intake process we're taught in grad school being so normative around white dominant culture, cis culture, and no matter who the specialist is, they almost always have some comment on, boy, I wish this would be added to intakes as a go-to question or a go-to discussion during an intake. If you could reshape how intakes are thought through by
Yeah.
clinicians, what would you want them to add to it for the average clinician that is like maybe not even specializing in this, but that you think this really needs to be a part of the discussion in every intake.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because usually it'll be like, are you married or single or divorced? And it's like, well, maybe you're all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Um, so in that category, I have extra things that would have check the box, and I always have the add your own. I mean, even just having that next to
Mm,
everything in your intake is an improvement, right? Where I don't even make recommendations on what the gender is. It's like, how do you identify your gender? What is your sexuality? Tell me about your relationship structure and how many partners you have. So it's more of creating open-ended questions on an intake would be nice, or at least boxes that have like check all that apply, right?
right.
Yeah, and then fill in your own. Yeah, and I've gotten feedback. People are like, "Wow, just this intake is doing something important for me." Like to feel like I can find myself and check off boxes on the intake that actually fit me instead of feeling like I never fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I didn't take insurance in my counseling practice because I had no idea how to handle it. The process of accepting insurance outside of a group practice can be tough, but most people looking for mental health care want to use their benefits to pay for sessions. If you're like me and you feel a little scared about taking insurance, or you just want to make it easier on yourself, and you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates. They also handle all the paperwork, from eligibility checks to claim submission and guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Plus, when you join Alma, you'll get access to time-saving tools for intake, scheduling, treatment plans, progress notes, and more in their included platform. It's going to make it so much easier for your team, so you can spend less time on administrative work and more time offering great care to your clients. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's helloalma.com/Joe to get started. I mean, if we're thinking about people that maybe haven't had advanced training, I think, in any specialty, there's like kind of a break point where you really should refer out. So
Yeah.
whether it's eating disorders or fill in
Yeah.
the blank. Um, for you in this specialty, what are the types of things that you're like, most therapists have the skills to handle these, but in this situation, you should probably refer out?
Yeah. I think um when they don't know how to deal with jealousy, well, let me think. It's like I still hear it. It breaks my heart where people come to me and they're like, yeah, our therapist just kept telling us just to be monogamous. Right?
Mm,
And so even though they said they were maybe non monogamous friendly, and so there is something about making sure you actually have experience in doing our own work as practitioners, that we really do accept this lifestyle and this orientation. I think it's both as a legitimate part of the menu, right? And that
mhm,
our only tool isn't to say go back to the mononormative way. So it's like if you don't feel like you can really enter that space and navigate increased complexity around jealousy, around attachment ruptures, and really like I think have a parts lens that can say, okay, you're getting so activated because there's 3 or 4 or 5 parts we need to explore for you, right? That's why this is triggering. Then refer out. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Because
yeah. Now, for you personally, as a
Mhm.
therapist and for your life, like, what has this work done for you?
Great question. Well, it really helped me see my own non monogamous ways and claim that at a different level. I didn't have a lot of language before, and now I have the language of like, oh, what my life is, right? And being more open and public and comfortable about that as well. So that's part of what it's done. And I love this population of people, right? They're just Yeah, such a rich population of people. I don't mean monetarily rich, right?
Mhm.
But like there's usually so much depth and there's so much awareness. And even if there's struggle, there's this desire to be really figuring it out. And there's people that are kind of embracing the multiplicity of themselves. So it's like people that we get to go to really interesting places with. And I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Tell me a little bit more about your books. Like,
Hmm.
what are some of the different kind of parts of it that we
Yeah.
should dig into? I mean, I know you talk a
Yeah.
lot about trauma and attachment and all that, but like dig into it. Get therapist nerdy with us.
Yeah, yeah. So Polysecure is the first book to bridge attachment theory and non-monogamy. Most attachment theory, either explicitly or implicitly, is very mononormative. And so I kept having clients be like, we know this is attachment stuff. We know understanding attachment's important, but like I can't do half of the things this regular book on attachment tells me to do because it's all monogamy. Right? And so I stepped into that gap and was like, okay, there needs to be something that bridges this together. And the book explains attachment, it explains some of the specific challenges that come up in non monogamy regarding attachment. And then it goes through, it's called the hearts. It's an acronym for here are the things you can do with a partner, not one partner that you're monogamous with, but any partner to build attachment security. And like, so here's really the basics of that can
And
happen in
I
any.
want to pause there and have you tell us some of those basics because
Yeah,
sometimes it's been since grad school that where it's not always top of mind.
totally.
What are some of those basics that you think are really important for people to master?
Yeah. So I do it in two phases. I do the regular safe haven and secure base. And like, what does that look like in any relationship? And just asking ourselves the questions of what do I need to feel emotionally safe in this relationship, as well as that secure base, which is sort of more like encouragement and support. But then the hearts is about being H is here, about being present. It's hard to attach to people when we're not present, and that's physical, but also really the quality of our presence when we're actually together, right? Not being distracted, actually paying attention to each other and tuning in. E is express delight. This one is not always covered in the basics of attachment, and it's one of my favorites. Dan Brown talks a lot about this in his attachment work of express delight is when we like are oozing this sense of joy and delightness in the person that we love. We don't even have to say it. It's not necessarily expressed through words. It's just we're emanating this what's called the attachment gaze, which is this like, heart the emoji with the heart eyes for somebody else, right? And we don't that's not just romantic, right? We do this in any of our attachment based relationships. That really builds self-esteem in between partners to have that express delight. Like you don't have to do things for me, you can just be and exist, and I'm so glad you're alive. That's sort of the essence of it.
Mm,
A is attunement. Are we tuning into each other's needs, feelings, into each other's minds? I don't have to agree with you, but can I tune into what's going on in your inner world, as well as reveal what's going on in my inner world? And that's very important, this sense of tuning in and tracking each other internally and externally. HEAR is repair. No, rituals and routines. Repair comes next. Rituals and routines are big and small. So they can be rites of passage you take together, or ceremonies you have, or decoupling things that you do. It also is really the everyday routines. Whether you're living together or not, how you say good morning and good evening, or when you're together, the types of things you do that kind of build this sense of us, whether that's two, three, or four people, there's that sense of us. And those routines and rituals really help with the attachment nervous system. Then
mhm.
T is turning towards after conflict. So, the Gottmans are the best at this, right? of conflict is inevitable. It's just how quick we repair, how quickly we turn back to each other after there's been a rupture. So really learning how to do good conflict repair work is crucial for any attachment-based relationship. And then S is secure attachment with self. So we take the heart that we just described and we apply that to ourself, and really creating this inner attachment that's needed to be in a more complex relationship structure and have multiple different relationships happening.
Wow. That's a good just reminder. Even just
Yeah.
thinking about anyone's relationship or relationships to focus on those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's Polysecure at a high level. And then Polywise was sort of the rest of the things that I saw, because I was on this mission to understand, like, okay, I have all these clients, they're opening up or they've already been open, and it's hard. Why is it hard? And again, the answer wasn't because it's non-monogamy or to go back to monogamy. And so my answer had 4 or 5 answers. And one of those things was the attachment challenges, which became the first book. And Polywise is the rest of those things. So switching a paradigm is a big deal. We shouldn't underestimate how significant it is to actually live in a completely different paradigm of love and sex and family. That's not easy for everyone to transition. Often what happens is if it's a couple that's opening up, all of the issues in their relationship will get exposed in the opening up process. So any cracks that were in the foundation of that relationship are now going to have more weight on them, and the relationship might crumble because of that. Not because of polyamory, but because there's things we weren't looking at, there's things we weren't addressing, there's things we were kind of brushing under the rug for years, and now we can't. Yeah. Some relationships are just not healthy in the first place. They're kind of a sinking ship, and they think non-monogamy is jumping onto a different ship. And you're like, no, like we have to question, is there enough health here to transition? There's things like codependency that make non-monogamy, they make any relationship hard, but non-monogamy is particularly much harder if there are partners that have codependent dynamics. And then also in Polywise is about the awakening that can happen. This is sort of more the beautiful, expansive, even spiritual side of non-monogamy, that this can be a real awakening and catalyst for people, for their growth, their self-help, also this embracing and allowing themselves and kind of shifting into a different developmental stage, to self-authoring who they are in their relationships. It can be like quite a big experience. So those are some of the highlights in Polywise.
Now, where would you say clinicians that are digging deeper into this work struggle the most?
Yeah. I think sometimes they struggle with maybe the equanimity that's needed to hang in there with clients when things are hard. And they struggle with like holding the view, like even having confidence to go, this is workable, or you know what, I don't think this is workable, or hey, what's happening here isn't sustainable. Like having that confidence to kind of assess and point those things out. I did a training a few weeks ago where I got to be with Dick Schwartz and watch him do demos. And it was one of the best things I've ever seen as a therapist, right? Just to sit and see him live do demos. And myself and really everyone there kept commenting on, like, he's so confident when he's talking to someone about the change that's possible for them. And that feels edgy to a lot of therapists and practitioners. And I think we kind of need a certain level of confidence of when to say, keep going to clients who are struggling in non-monogamy. And then also the confidence to go, this is too much. This isn't bending, you're breaking, and something needs to change quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jessica, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that you can absolutely niche. There will still be more people than you can handle. You can have a unique specialty you think no one will come to, and they will come. That really has been proven to myself over and over again. And I've coached many other practitioners on like, do exactly, like really state who you want your clientele to be, and it will happen. And I'd also say, if you don't want to work weekends or evenings, you don't have to.
So awesome.
There are people in other time zones or in your time zone, your practice will fill up. Right?
So great.
Yeah.
Jessica, if people want to get your book, if they want to follow your work, where should we send them?
Yeah, just jessicafern.com. They can find my books there, me there, and my books are on all the places that you find the books.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that idea of just thinking through, like, what do you want your practice to look like? Is this a specialty that you want to learn more about and get more training to grow into a different area? I think sometimes people think that a specialty is going to limit people, but, I probably stole this from someone. The idea of a specialty being a magnet, being both sides of the magnet, that you're repelling certain people that you don't want to work with. Even recently, had some pre-consulting calls with folks that were clearly a bad fit, and their expectations were different than what we thought we had articulated on the website. And it's like, I want to pass those people on to someone outside of practice, because they're going to then refer people that are like themselves. And also I want to attract the people that really are ready to go. They want to run full tilt. They want to do big things. They want to grow their practice. They want to grow a podcast or write books or be a keynote speaker at a TEDx or something like that. Like, those are the people that we're serving. And so being able to kind of know, who is your specialty? Who are you working with? Is really helpful to sit with, and to even say that shifts. Just today, I was working with a one-on-one consulting client, and he said to me, what if in like a few years I feel burned out from this work? He's doing really heavy, emotional work with people, and he feels like he's at his max right now and building a group practice and all that. And I just said to him, you can change your mind. You can shift. I mean, I used to work with angry kids and loved working with angry teens. It was such a mental challenge to help them just like trust someone and make better decisions and stop getting on probation over and over. And then I didn't like it as much anymore. I had to transition. I had to hire people that could do that work because we were really known for that. But I wanted to go home at 3, and I wanted to pick up my kids from school, and I wanted to work with people that could come see me during the day. And that's not teenagers typically. So things shift in your life, and that's okay. Having that evaluation and intentionality is so important in the work that we do. Thank you so much to Alma for being our sponsor today. I wish Alma had been around when I had my private practice. I had no idea what I was doing. That's why I didn't take insurance. But if Alma had been there, I would have. And there's no reason that as a clinician, you should be spending hours on paperwork to bill for insurance, or not knowing for sure that you'll get reimbursed for sessions with your clients. If you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, but don't want to navigate the process and paperwork on your own, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates and a guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.